Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Lucy. Today I have a video for you on conversation and how to be an amazing conversation partner. All of this is what amazing speakers do, what amazing conversationalists do. I think we should get straight into it. The first tip I have for you is ask hypothetical questions. You might notice a trend here. We are going to be trying to avoid yes-no questions. They are the devil when it comes to starting conversations and maintaining good conversations. Asking hypothetical questions and talking about imaginary scenarios and situations is a really good way of getting to know someone better and getting them to open up as well. And it's not too difficult to do, even if you aren't very advanced at English. All you have to learn is the conditional tenses. Maybe I should make a video on the conditionals. Let me know if you'd like one. But really good questions are questions like, if you could have any job in the world, what would it be? That's a really good one because you get to know someone's biggest desires and they get to really open up to you. So for example, if you were to ask me that question, if I could have any job in the world, what would it be? I would say I would love to be a reconstructive plastic surgeon. That is what I always wanted to do. Unfortunately, you have to go through the whole medicine route, which wasn't quite for me. But I wanted to help people rebuild their faces after accidents and trauma. Fun fact about me. Or another question, if you won the lottery, what would you do? What would you buy first? That's a good one. So if you asked me that, what would I do if I won the lottery? The first thing would be to pay off my parents' mortgage. And then I would go about doing secret deeds. I wouldn't tell anyone that I'd won the lottery, but I'd make sure that the money goes to good places. This brings us on to our next point, our next tip, which is to emphasize similarity. So you could respond to some of the things I've said and emphasize how similar we are because we like people who are like us. Emphasizing similarity improves social relations. And in fact, salespeople use this a lot and they do it in physical ways as well. It's a known technique that salespeople will mimic hand gestures and body language, and that can actually improve sales without the buyer even realizing it. Now, we don't want to do that. We're not necessarily salespeople. Well, you might be, so you can use that. But when we are having a conversation, we want to find points of connection, points of mutual interest. If you hear your conversation partner say something that you really relate with or that you can add to, you need to let them know. So for example, with that first hypothetical question about if I could have any job, what would I do? If that related to you at all, you could say phrases like, yes, I totally agree with you, or we're really similar on that, or we think similarly on that, or I'm on the same page as you. Those are really good phrases you can use to show connection and the fact that you are similar to someone. Now, the next tip, tip number 3, is slightly strange, but it's really important. It is to be aware of the sounds that you make whilst you are thinking. Now, you might not be totally aware of the sounds you make whilst you're thinking, and more importantly, how different they are in different cultures. In some cultures and in some languages, it's totally and utterly normal to make really loud, open-mouthed sounds when you are thinking of something. And I noticed this in Spain. I lived and taught in Spain for quite a while. I had a Spanish partner. I lived with his Spanish family. I really did integrate into Spanish society. And one thing that surprised me at the beginning was the sounds they make when they think. And it was something like this. It's just so different to what we do. I think in British culture, it's considered rude to have your mouth open in front of someone. It's not like a written rule, but in general, we're very, very conscious of eating with our mouths closed, of not talking with food in our mouths, and just not going in anyone's face. So when we are thinking, we are more likely to say, with our mouth closed. So we still make that sound, we still take that thinking time. Let me know in the comments below what sort of sound and mouth shape you use in your language and culture when you are taking a break in a conversation and thinking, and then maybe think about tweaking that if you're going to be speaking to native British people or Americans as well, just English speakers in general, because it's different to us. We would be maybe slightly surprised if someone went in our face. Now, tip number 4, this is another one about filling in gaps, but it's a more general one. It is improve fluency to avoid having gaps. It can be really embarrassing and frustrating when you keep getting stuck mid-conversation. It's something that all language learners are scared of. A great way of improving your English conversation skills is to aim for fluency. You can learn to speak fluently at your own pace from the comfort of your own home 24/7 thanks to Lingoda, the sponsor of this lesson segment, and their new, more flexible offer. It's the Language Marathon Challenge, which you can choose to do for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. You can learn English, business English, French, German, or Spanish in interactive virtual online classes with native speaking qualified teachers. You'll also get a free Cambridge certificate exam at the end. I'm very happy to bring you this offer because I have tried out a variety of Lingoda lessons and I had an excellent experience. You can choose from over 500 structured lessons that include all important aspects and skills such as grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, speaking, and it costs much less than regular offline courses, from as little as just €6 per class. And as an extra motivational push, you can earn up to €400 cash back if you attend over 90% of your lessons. So now you have 2 options for this offer. You can use my code Lucy15, or you can claim a 7-day free trial. Choose wisely as you can only pick one. The link is in the description box. Best of luck and let me know how it goes. Right, number 5. This is a tip that I wish I had learnt a long time ago. It's useful for you as learners of English, and it's also useful for native speakers of English. It is be sensible with how you word potentially sensitive questions. So imagine I ask someone, how is your job at Google going? And they respond with, I was fired, thanks for asking. Or, what do you do for work? And they respond with, I'm employed and desperately searching. Oh, it's such an awkward situation when you ask someone a question, trying to make positive conversation, and they just knock you down. And it puts a downer on the whole conversation, and it makes you feel bad, and it makes them feel negatively towards you. Now, there are good ways of rewording these questions so that it gives people some escape room, ways to avoid difficult topics. So instead of asking someone, how's your job going? You could say something like, fill me in on your life since I last saw you, or catch me up on what's happened since I've last seen you. If you ask to be filled in or you ask to be caught up, that's a good way of asking someone to update you on everything that's going on. Or instead of asking something like, what do you do for work? What is your job? What do you do for a living? You could ask a more general question like, so, what keeps you busy? It's a little nicer than, what do you do? It's funny because in British English, what do you do is quite a common question. It means, what do you do for a living? What do you do for work? But when I went over to America and I asked people, what do you do? They were a bit confused. Maybe they were just being difficult. I'm sure they understood me. But had I asked a question like, what keeps you busy? Maybe they would have been more chatty with me. Now, number 6 is a great one if you have a lower level of English, but you want to keep conversation going. It is ask open-ended questions. And again, this is part of avoiding yes/no questions. So if I ask someone, do you like London? They could say yes or no. And then that might be it. And then I'm stuck searching for something else to say. However, if I ask a question like, so what do you like most about London? Or what do you like least about London? that gets the person talking. They've got no way out. They have to say something a bit broader, and then you can expand on that. So questions using what and how are really good for keeping conversation going. And then you can use all the other tricks like emphasizing similarity. If someone dislikes the same thing as you, I'm with you on that one. I can't stand queuing. Queuing came to my mind because we're in lockdown at the moment because of the coronavirus, and I don't like the queues outside the supermarkets. Now, number 7 is ask for advice. And I'm not sure if I have a video on asking for advice. And if I don't, I should definitely make one because it's a big topic and it's a great tool in conversation. So when you ask someone for their advice, or for their opinion, but more advice, it's showing that you trust them, that you respect them, it makes them feel knowledgeable, and it just improves the connection between the two of you. If you shared a problem and you feel like you've spent quite a long time talking about it and you want to pass the baton to send it over to the other person for their response, you could say something like, so what would you do in my situation? What would you do if you were me? And that's a really nice way of asking for advice and asking for opinion without saying, what is your advice? What is your opinion? Another great way is to say, I've always wondered about why there are so many pigeons in England. Why do I always end up talking about pigeons? I think my first ever video, I spoke about pigeons. Maybe it was my second. Anyway, I've always wondered why there are so many pigeons in England. Maybe you could offer some insight in that? Then they could give their opinion as to why there are so many pigeons. What a ridiculous example. So in general, the majority of these tips have been about making sure that the other person has lots of opportunities to speak. In general, people enjoy talking more than they do listening. You can use this to your advantage if you are a learner of English. I have some extra little mini tips. These could be considered obvious, but I think they're quite important. And these are more specific to learners of English. A big one is don't be afraid to ask for repetition. A really good tip that I provide to my students is just don't use the same asking for repetition phrase over and over again. Have a couple up your sleeve. Oh, sorry, what was that? Oh, could you repeat that? Would you mind saying that again? What does that word mean? Different ways, and maybe brief the person. Say, oh, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions about the language you use, because I am learning and I really like the way you speak. There, we're offering a compliment, making them feel good. They'll feel flattered that you like the way they speak, and they should be more than willing to help you. This brings me on to my next little tip, which is offer sincere compliments. I'm not talking about physical compliments. In general, I find that physical compliments can actually make people feel uncomfortable unless they're really genuine. Say I have 2 people come up to me. One says, oh my God, you look great. And the other one says, wow, I really enjoyed our conversation. It was so interesting to talk to you. I would find the compliment about my personality and about an experience that we've shared much more flattering and much more easy to digest than a compliment on physical appearance. But everyone's different. But I do feel like in general, offering sincere compliments that aren't about looks can be a really good way of bonding with someone. It's like in the comment section of my videos. I don't necessarily respond to comments about the way I look, but I do often respond to comments about the quality of my lessons, especially open-ended questions with what, how, and why. But if someone just says, I like your top today, I don't really have much to say apart from thank you. And the last little mini tip is talk about emotions and make sure that you know how to talk about emotions. There's lots of obscure vocabulary related to emotions and lots of little nuances, especially to do with negative ones. There are lots of idioms attached to them as well. I have done a video on happiness related idioms, which I think is a really good one, because when people say things like, oh, I'm absolutely over the moon, or I'm on cloud 9, it can be really, really confusing, and you can, wonder if they're being positive or negative. I mean, even I sometimes get confused. I used to have an American boss, and I remember she said, can you come in and help with a co-worker's presentation because she's absolutely bombing it. And I thought, bombing it, like, woo, bomb, like, absolutely, she is the bomb. I was like, great, what does she need help with? And she was like, I need you to take over. And I was so confused, but it turned out that I just didn't understand the idiom she was using. So yes, the one on happy expressions would be really useful for you. And fun fact, that was a video I filmed after going on a first date with my fiance, I think. I was in a really happy mood and I decided to write a happy video. And I remember all the comments were like, oh my God, you've drunk a lot of coffee. And the funny thing was that I hadn't drunk any coffee. I'd met a really great man and we'd been on a date finally. So yeah, if you want to see giddy Lucy, who's just fallen in love and has just realised that she's met the man of her dreams, then you can watch that video. I'll link it down below. I've done another video about ways to express disgust, because that's an emotion that I've never really seen lessons on that in school, but I thought it was a really important topic to cover for my students. Let me know if there are any lesson topics on emotions and feelings that you think that I haven't covered, that you think I should cover, that would be interesting for you. I think that brings me to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to check out Lingoda. They've got their new marathon language challenge. You can get up to €400 cash back. And also the access to the Cambridge certificate exams is pretty phenomenal, actually. When they told me about that new feature, I was really excited for my students. Don't forget to connect with me on all my social media. I've got my Facebook, my Instagram and my Twitter, and I have my personal channel, which is now turning into my vlogging channel, where I do vlogs of my life here on the farm. If you don't know, I am marrying a farmer. We live here on a farm and we have a very quiet and peaceful life, especially in lockdown. Well, I really enjoyed filming this video for you. I've got lots more planned, but do put your recommendations down below. I will see you soon for another lesson. Mwah.